long time ago, I started studying American Sign Language. Sounds like an echo. I started studying American Sign Language, and I noticed that deaf people, one, are not silent. Deaf people are some of the loudest folks that I know. But there's this idea that in socializing with them that I learned that what I had understood as silence or quiet was very different for members of the deaf community. Because while I did not speak one word when I started, correct? I didn't say anything. My hands were communicating. My face was communicating. My body was communicating. There were still words, even in the midst of the silence. Which then made me start thinking about, well, if deaf people tend to be in the silence already, for the most part, then are they already not in a meditative state? Because they don't have the auditory distractions that we get distracted by when we are meditating. How many of us, while meditating recently, were in that place of until and then recenter, and then there's the bristling of the chair and stuff, and we're doing our best to, one, bring ourselves back because we get distracted ever so easily. And then I have a tickle in my throat, but I don't want to cough because I don't want to do anything. I don't want to make anybody out of there. So I'm going to hold it in my throat. And I'm going to stay in my meditative state of mind because I'll do it quietly. And yet, it's more distracting to fight it than to just let it be. So today's discussion is this idea of breaking away from what does it mean to be in the silence, right? And one of the things I want to start us off with, if you will experiment with me, I would like everyone to take a nice, long, slow inhale. And that's all. And raise your hand when you've reached your max. Keep it. Keep it. Just hold it till you can't hold it anymore. And then let it go. Now, is inhaling breathing? I have one. Is inhaling breathing? Is just exhaling breathing? Or do you need both an inhalation and an exhalation to breathe? When it's time to breathe, this is one of the things I mentioned last week in Baltimore. When it's time to breathe, how many of us wake up in the morning and have to look for our breath? How many of us spend time searching for? I'm looking for my breath. I'm trying to find my inhale. I know I had my inhale earlier because I exhaled, so I know Now, I mentioned this very specifically because what we do in our spiritual stuff is we spend a lot of time looking for. We spend a lot of time looking for whatever we call God. We look for peace of mind. We look for prosperity. We look for love. We're looking for that next class, that next workshop, that next book that's going to give me the answer, the magic pill that's going to give me something so I never have that struggle that was mentioned earlier in the reading. Because I don't want to struggle anymore. I don't want pain and discomfort. And I don't want it anymore. And I want to reach nirvana so I never struggle, stress ever again. I just want to be an amoeba. I just want to be in the bliss all the time. No, you don't. We think we do. We think we do, but we don't. Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching that it is the empty space that makes this box a room. That it is the silence between the note that makes the music. That we already know that if life was beep, none of us would want that. We need the ebb and the flow for there to truly be life. This is one reason why, so Declaration of Principles number 5, we believe that the ultimate goal of life is to be completely free of all discord. And many of us are like, well, part of it is like, I know that's not possible, but then the other part is, but do I do it? Like, I would really love that. Like to be free of all of that. And yet, how many people work out? How many people don't work out but want to work out? Raise your hand. We're going to pretend that you work out anyway. When you work out, do you not feel some kind of next morning discomfort of, but it was a good workout? Like we're happy that we are in pain because we worked out. Like I have my Kung Fu students, so there's this move in Kung Fu, square horse. And I make them hold this till the legs start shaking. And I usually put a teacup there. You could ask Tracy, I usually put a teacup there because you can't let the teacup fall, and you stay here. And you do your strikes. And then afterwards, like your thighs burn. And then you try to stand up and it's like, okay. Oh. But afterwards, your legs are stronger. You have greater flexibility because part of the goal is to increase stamina and fortitude. Then why do we get involved in new thought and we try to avoid the things that are going to give us emotional, intellectual, and spiritual stamina and fortitude? Why do we fight against the very exercises that are going to give us the ability to stand as the light when the darkness exists in this world of effects? Because it's easy for us to spiritually bypass things like racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, etc. It's easy to bypass all of that. It is ever so easy. Road most traveled. It is easy. But if we are going to have the emotional, psychological, spiritual fortitude in our era to do what the Gandhi, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and many of the peaceful protests, if we are going to be able to stand in and as the truth, then one of the things we need to do is understand, what does it mean for me to be in the silence? What does it mean for me to be in meditation? What does it mean for me to enter into? And the funny thing is, I've come to a point where I don't really think it's the silence that we're really talking about. I don't think it's the silence, because even when we are silent, our thoughts are still going. So the mind still isn't silent. And ultimately, there's only one mind, and that mind is God's mind. And that mind is ever creative and expanding consciousness, then it cannot be silent. And if that mind is God's mind, and that mind is that, and that mind is my mind now, then there has to be a part of my mind that is also not silent ever. Because that part of my mind is always on point. It's always creating, always expanding, always becoming more and more of itself. So why am I busy, or what is it that I am busy trying to quiet, trying to silence? My human mind? But if there's only God, and God is all there is, and God is a circle whose circumference is nowhere and whose center everywhere, and I am that center of God, and there is only that one mind, that only that one, the thing itself, and that's all there is, then there is no human and God. There is only God showing up in, through, and as this thing called human. So even my human mind is God's mind. But maybe what it is I'm misusing it. Maybe what I'm doing is the same thing we do with things like electricity, or the same thing, I'm sorry for this. Misusing the principle of music. Maybe that's what I'm doing, because I know, like right now, if I mention, now, so I know we have two musical geniuses in the room. Anybody else a musical genius? Raise your hand. Okay, so if I say an A note, right? It comes to your mind. Now, it may come to your mind as a vocal A. It may come to your mind as a piano A. It may come to your mind guitar, it may come to your mind as flute, you may see it in your mind's eye on the scale F-A. There it is, right there, F-A-C-E, it's that one, A, that's it. However it comes to your mind, but it comes to your mind in some way. Which means there is a divine principle for that A that you now have multiple ways of applying that divine principle. This thing that we call life is absolutely no different. No different. So I want to share a little something with you. So there's this, I don't know if you ever read it. It's an amazing book. Right now it's called The Art of Life by Ernest Holmes. Previously published as This Thing Called Life. Let us partake of his wisdom for a moment. Page 137. Since life, acting as law, has no my inflection. Since life, acting as law, has no personal intention for you other than the one you give it, it logically follows that there must be a definite idea in your mind, a definite belief or acceptance in your mind. There is no God's will other than the will of God that you establish as. Because we are anthropomorphizing God in far too many ways. And I understand the linguistic convenience of it, I do. Because we've spent a lot of time, how many of us, this is meditation for you. Okay, got my incense, candles, got my beads, okay. Om Shanti. Did I do laundry? Yes, yeah, I did. Okay. Oh, was that the phone? Because I thought I turned it off. Okay, all right. Monkey mind, monkey mind. There's only God and at peace. How many of us go into meditation and that's where we go? And so we fight against it. You know, every time I go into meditation, I'm always thinking about stuff. I'm worrying about the to-do list or I fall asleep. So I never want to meditate. I just lie and tell people that I meditate because it's easier to lie. Like we go through, and that's fine. There are times when Tracy's on the elliptical and she falls asleep and it's fine. It happens. It's part of the process. But she doesn't stop. I don't know how she does it. I digress. My point is, if we are truly going to step into whatever our next level of evolution in this spiritual thing is, then we have to be willing to do the work, right? And so what if silence isn't about silence? What if it's about serenity? What if it's about finding this place of serenity in the midst of whatever is going on? And I mention this very specifically because the first time, and I think I may have been in elementary school, if not, it was middle school. First time, school field trip, we went to see an orchestra live. Now, I had been listening to classical music prior to that because my father told me, you do know that's classical music as the soundtrack to Bugs Bunny. No, it's not. Go to the library and we get the, oh, that's Bugs Bunny. What? That's the Lone Ranger, but that's the William Tell Overture is the theme to Lone Ranger. What? Blew my mind. But I'm sitting there in the audience and they're, you know, tuning and boom. The conductor walks out. And they started playing and I started crying. And I didn't know what a spiritual experience was, but I know for a fact I had one. I know because I vanished. I disappeared. The only thing that there was the music. And see, what I learned many years later from practicing martial arts is there's a saying where Bruce Lee even quoted it, where he says, "I'm not afraid of the man who knows 1,000 kicks. I'm not afraid of that man. I'm afraid of the man who does one kick 1,000 times." Right? It's a difference. But as you're practicing, there's this thing in the martial arts called, and it's in Zen, called Mushin. M-U-S-H-I-N. Mushin. No-mindedness. Which if anyone runs or does art or does music, it's the state of being in the zone. Now you are heavily engaged in whatever it is, music, heavily engaged in the art, heavily engaged in dance. You are in it. So there is not necessarily any silence, but there is serenity. Because the only thing that exists in that moment is the song. And it's not even you singing the song, it's the song singing you. It's that song expressing itself in, through, and as you. I think when I was here last time, I think I mentioned it, I may not have. If I did, forgive me. If I didn't, here it is. In Ernest Holmes' The Healing Anatomy of Prayer, he says, God in me, as me, is me. God in me, as me, is me. There is nowhere, there is nothing about us that is not God, that is not sacred, that is not holy, that is not divine, that is not love made flesh. And knowing this, then ultimately, there is nothing that is impossible to us. Because if we say, for example, had this conversation with a fellow soul sister recently about Star Trek. Any Trekkies in the room? You remember way back when, the William Shatner Star Trek, right? Yeah. Way back when. The communicators that they used, what were they? Flip phones. And then fast forward, Jean-Luc Picard and the Next Generation, and their consoles were not buttons and levers, they were touch screens. If the mind of Gene Roddenberry and the creative producers and staff created something from their imagination that became something we use, that became something today that we use without even thinking about, we just grab our phone and we... Then why is it so difficult to also believe that we will eventually have food replicators? To be able to feed every man, woman, and child on the face of this planet, that there is no shortage. Why is it so difficult? But yet and still, what we do is we buy into precedent rather than principle. Precedent. We buy into the effect. We see racism. We see sexism. We see war and rumors of war. We see all of that, and it is far easier to believe, like Thomas, you said you Jesus? Come here. Show me your ribs. Let me see your hands. Oh, there are actually holes in there. Okay, maybe you are Jesus. We're like Thomas, we doubt. We need to see it. And so when we see the effect, it is easier to believe that that is what is real, rather than entering into this state of serenity that says, God in me, as me, is me. To let that be what washes over us, to let that be what overtakes us to such a degree that when anything opposite that, anything that is showing up that is not life affirming, shows up, that we are able to stand there and say, while I understand what I am seeing, I also understand what I am being. And in the place of my beingness, I am able to call forth a different experience. Tracy and I recently went to Pittsburgh. Matter of fact, getting ready to go right back to Pittsburgh. Because right now, my mother is experiencing Alzheimer's. And it is rapidly declining. And I mean rapidly. She is hallucinating and the whole 9 yards. I mean, rapidly. There is a picture in the small room on the second floor of two versions of Michael Jackson. The Michael Jackson, more brown skin, afro, larger nose, lighter skin, smaller nose, right? It's right there in the little room. And those are her two adopted children. that play in the house, and she has to get ready to fix something to go feed them. Ask me, did I meet them? It is very easy for that to overtake me, for me to be overcome with the grief and the sadness, especially since her mother went through it too. And I was in middle school, so I remember very strongly. But if I do not allow what I know truth is to also occupy some part of my conscious mind, then the only thing I'm focusing on is the effect. And as Ernest Holmes said, for practitioners, which I say to everyone, when you are going to a hospital to pray for whomever is in the hospital, do not walk into their room and see a sick person. If you are going to walk in there and you are going to see a sick person, it is better for you to leave the hospital and not come back. Why? Because if you walk in and you are seeing a sick person, then you are feeding your energy into the effect. And in essence, what you are doing is saying, oh, Ray's sick. Oh, let me pray for Ray. I know that there is God, and right now where God is, but Ray is sick. Oh, dear God, please let Ray not be sick. Please. I'll stop eating chocolate. I'll stop whatever you want me to stop doing. I'll stop doing. I just want Ray to be, he's in so. We are adding to the energy of it. So the challenge is, how do I hear the discord and yet bring harmony back to it? I've used this example many times, referencing when people don't know what a practitioner does. And I say, you know what a piano is, right? And they say, yeah. And I say, you know what a tuning fork is? Yeah. Okay, so you know what a piano tuner does? Yeah. Okay, so you hit the keys, and it's off key. The piano tuner doesn't come in and say, oh, Lord! Oh, what us gonna do? Oh, no. Oh. The piano tuner walks in and says, ding, 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 ding. Oh, wow, several keys are out of tune. Okay. And they play and it's perfect. How can they do that? Because they know that there is a divine harmonic. And they know the tools to bring this piano or guitar, wrong end, guitar, you can't. Guitar back into harmony. That's what we are being challenged to do. So when we see what's happening in the world of effects, when we see what's happening on the news, restore serenity, restore peace of mind, restore our minds to that oneness that knows, and then go out in the world and do what is ours to do. And sometimes what that is pray. And sometimes what that is have a conversation. And sometimes what that is share a post on Facebook that is more hope-filled, joy-filled, laughter-filled, instead of sharing blah that you saw on somebody else's page. Look, I saw this on his page, so I'm gonna share it on your page. And we know misery loves, that's precedent. That is a spiritual law based on precedent. Like attracts like. So if what we're going to do is, stepping forward, what tools do I have that bring me into a state of alignment with being calm, being serene, being whatever that is for me? Because it's going to be different for each of us. Each of us has a very different fingerprint, thumbprint, vocal quality, height, thickness, shade, interest, etc. So one form of meditation is not going to work for everyone. So rather than trying to conform yourself and fit yourself in the box of, they said I'm supposed to say Om Shanti and it's going to give me enlightenment, so that's what I'm going to do. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. It's not working and I'm tired. Om Shanti, Om Shanti. Am I pronouncing it incorrectly? Om Shanti, Om. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Om Shanti. I don't know what I'm saying. Right, is it Shanti? Shanti. I'm gonna just breathe. And then you find out that you're breathing wrong. I'm supposed to inhale for 7 seconds, hold for 10, and exhale for 7? I'm done. I'm getting a sandwich. Rather than understanding that it's going to be different for each of us. It has to be different for each of us. We are the incarnation of that which is all there is. And it is showing up in, through, and as everything. I've said many times, how many dog lovers in the room? How many breeds of dog exist? Cat lovers in the room? How many breeds of feline exist? How many roses? How many? Infinite numbers of, because that which Spirit is showing up as everything and everything and everything, on and on and on and on. Why do we put a limit on? Why is it so easy for us to close the top rather than to step forward and say, what does it truly mean for me to be open at the top? To say, where am I closing myself off? How am I closing myself off? Is it that I know I'm supposed to have a conversation and I'm not engaging in the conversation? Is it that I know there's a part of me that is looking for that next class, that next book, that next workshop, that next something, rather than simply saying, just be. Just be. There's anybody in here formerly a fundamental Christian or some kind of Christian or Christian background, something like me? Okay. Hi, I'm Ray, and no, okay. So, because there are moments where I'm still healing from some of. So, you may be familiar, there's a phrase, the still small voice of God, right? And anybody know where that comes from? Because it shows up basically in only one place in the Bible. Ooh, y'all didn't read y'all's Bible. No, I'm just joking. In 2 Kings, where God is basically showing Jeremiah, dude, why are you always looking for me to be big and loud and audacious rather than looking for me in, like Blake said, in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour? Why are you looking for me to be when I am right here in this moment? So maybe what we're being invited to do is find that place within ourselves where we can see and hear and feel just how divine we are. Not finding it outside of us, not looking for it somewhere else, but simply saying, and one of the things I said before, last Sunday, was just for 10 seconds. Give yourself just 10 seconds of sitting with, I'm good. 10 seconds, I'm smart. 10 seconds of, I can. 10 seconds of, we will. 10 seconds of, it is done. Just 10 seconds. And I guarantee, let me end on this, because Tracy already put up the thing and said, if my time. There was, in the January 1952 Science of Mind magazine, Ernest Holmes said, "It is our simple and sincere conviction that if millions of people were affirmatively praying every day for our nation and our leaders, spiritual powers would be loosed across the country, which would impel it into right action." But it has to start with us. Are we spiritually affirming, declaring what we know to be true for ourselves? Because otherwise, I can say namaste, but if I truly don't believe that I am divine, then how can I acknowledge that that which is the divine in me sees itself in you when I can't see it in me? So maybe the invitation is, let's just be still and know. Let's just be still and know. Let's pray. Simply allowing ourselves to breathe, with no concern for where this next breath will come from or where this last breath went. Just surrendering to the breath, because the body knows what to do, and that which God is breathing itself as us, right here, right now. So from this place of surrender and this place of allowing, I speak what I know. God in me, as me, is me. And what is true for me is true for everyone in this room, everyone in this city, everyone in this state, and beyond. It is true for all. God is all there is, in, through, and as. And what it is, all that Spirit is, must be true for me as well. God is love, I am love. God is the demonstration of truth and power, and so am I. God is not healing, but God is the demonstration of health and wholeness, completeness and perfection, and so am I. So am I to such a degree that I am able to see that same completeness and perfection and wholeness in others. That through my acknowledgement of that which I am as the light of God, I help others to see their own divinity as well. That which is the truth of all of us right here, right now. Light, love, peace, power, oneness. Knowing this to be true, filled with gratitude, because what I know is that the law always says yes. The law said yes before we gathered for this sacred service, the law saying yes during the service, and the law will continue to say yes long after service has ended. Because it is God saying yes to itself. Yes, I am what you are. And so in gratitude, I surrender this, I relinquish it, I place it back into the law from whence it came, because I know it is already done. It is already showing up right here, right now, because that which it is, God, is in, through, and as, right here, right now. And to seal it in truth, to affirm it and declare it because we collectively know it and are calling it forth, together we say, and so it is. Amen. My pleasure. Thank you.